Proszę Państwa, chciałbym przywitać naszych kolejnych gości. We have with us Marijana Mance, team leader of multilateral relations and at the DG Environment, and also Juergen Helbig, senior expert and international chemical policy coordinator, also in the DG ENV. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I'm really happy to have us with us and to have this chance to reconnect, because we have a chance to cooperate before in the framework of many multilateral environmental instruments negotiation in the past. And therefore, I would like to invite you, Marijana, I understand that you will be the first speaker today to present what are the current negotiations of the surrounding key international agreements, such as this new plastic convention, which is going right now. What are the outcome of this science policy panel discussion, and also a global framework on the chemicals. Marijana, the floor is yours. Okay.
Thank you very much, Shimon. Good morning, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here. And indeed, Juergen and me will present the latest updates on sound management of chemicals and ways to prevent pollution from the global perspective and the work that we are currently doing. So we'll start with presentation of the work under Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution. We'll move on to plastic agreement, and then we'll present also the achievements under global framework on chemicals that was adopted under long night discussions in September 2023. So, but first, let's go to Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution, because indeed this is a very important work that is currently ongoing in the multilateral arena. It is a direct response to the UN Secretary General's statement that humanity is currently waging a war on nature. And
I see your presentation, but I understand that on the small screen, but I see that it's not appear on the big screen. If we could.
Sorry?
I say that I see your presentation on the small screen, so I guess that you are starting the sharing, but I see that there is not on the main one, so the audience cannot follow it. So maybe we ask the technicians to react. Is it something which?
Yes, I'm working on it. Let's see. Okay, great. So as I mentioned, work on Science Policy Panel is a response to Secretary General's statement that humanity is waging a war on nature, and based on this, UNEP made a report, Making Peace with Nature, where it highlighted the importance really of the science policy interface to address triple planetary crises, the crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And as you know, we do have already two science policy panels on climate change, IPCC, on biodiversity, IPBS, that are delivering very important assessments that actually guide us in our policy work and adaptive policy management. But we missed the one on pollution and waste. So UNEP already mandated the work assessing the options to strengthen science policy interface on chemicals, waste and pollution. And UNEP 5, the largest UN governing body on environment, United Nations Environment Assembly, gave a clear mandate that the work is started on establishing science policy panel. In this resolution, there was a call to establish open-ended working group that would design all the elements of the panel. 4 functions of the panel were also identified, and we'll come back to that later. There was a clear request to cooperate closely with the multilateral environmental agreements of relevance. So, as you know, Basel Convention, Rotterdam, Stockholm, Minamata, and relevant international organizations. And there was a call to the executive director to collaborate closely with the World Health Organization for the clear link between pollution and health. There is a big role for the open-ended working group, so I'll not go into details, but basically, this is the group that really needs to establish the foundation document. It needs to foresee how the panel will be functioning, how it will be prioritized, themes that it would be addressing, and how finally we would come to the policy relevant assessments. I trust this presentation will be shared, so you will be able to get back to the details of the open-ended working group and its mandate. So far, we have had 4 meetings of the open-ended working group. The first session has taken part in 2 parts. We expected that the June meeting this year would be the last meeting because the mandate of the open-ended working group was to close the work by 2024. But unfortunately, due to coordinated efforts of the petrochemical countries, this was not possible, and we are heading for a resumed session of the open-ended working group 3, which will most likely take place at the beginning of next year. So far, the objective and scope were clearly defined. As you see on the screen, we have the functions of the panel defined already by the resolution. The first 4 functions, so the horizon scanning, conducting assessments, identifying key gaps in scientific research, communication between scientists, disseminating findings, and information sharing with all countries. We do have the 5th function that we've managed to come to terms on with the developing countries, and that's capacity building function, which is very relevant for actually strengthening of the capacities of the developing countries to be able to participate in the work of the panel. We do have also the skeleton outline or the outline of the overall foundational document, which would look like the following at the screen. So we would have scope, objective, functions of the panel, operating principles, institutional arrangements, which are very critical for functioning of the panel, and then a number of annexes, which are really critical to define all the details of the procedure, financial arrangements, relationships with key stakeholders, processes for determining the work program, processes for review, adoption of reports, and arrangements for identifying and engaging with experts, including, of course, a very important conflict of interest policy. Proposed institutional arrangements foresee that there would be a decision-making body, plenary, but also Bureau for Administrative Oversight and Interdisciplinary Expert Committee for Scientific Oversight. The relationships with key stakeholders will be very critical and relevant part of the work as well. These would be contributors and users, those that may be impacted, and this will be also reflected in the institutional arrangements, their engagement, their participation in the work program, and some work has already been done in the open-ended working group 2 to really define the stakeholders' approaches to relationship and intersessional work. Work-related procedures we've already mentioned. So with this, I can inform you that we plan the resumed session back-to-back with the Intergovernmental Conference, really to establish the panel. So the resumed session would really need to finalize the foundation document and at least rules of the procedure so that the functioning can be clarified. And there would be intergovernmental conference that would establish the panel. After that, the panel would start functioning, and the first session of the panel would be foreseen some 6 months after its establishment. The things that still need to be finalized are named institutional arrangements, secretarial arrangements, because we do foresee that there would be a secretariat that would be somehow having joint functions between United Nations Environment Program and the World Health Organizations, and then rules of procedure. So you see that we have quite a number of issues still open for the establishing of the panel. With this, I'll pass on to the plastic agreement, which was also mandated by UNEA 5. the work was mandated to really develop a legally binding instrument that would address plastic, and that the negotiations should be concluded by 2024. We are currently at the 5th meeting of the International Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee that is currently taking place in Korea, in Busan. It will be finishing on the 2nd of December, so it's been already prolonged a little bit. However, the information from Busan is that the negotiations are not progressing at the pace at which we would have wished to progress. So really all the best of luck to our negotiators there to succeed to conclude the treaty, because the diplomatic conference is foreseen for the spring 2025, and the conference would then adopt the treaty, hopefully. But it's important to keep in mind that there are a few groups of countries working on the plastic agreement. So there is a big group of high ambition coalition of 65 countries that really have high ambitions for the plastic agreement, that really want to progress and to have a very meaningful result at the end of negotiations. There are major players that overall share the ambition, but have not yet joined higher ambition coalition, as you see, Brazil, Indonesia, Malaysia, US. And then there is this challenging group of countries that like to call themselves like-minded countries, major petrochemical producers that would like to actually restrict the plastic agreement to the waste management agreement, which is of course something that is unacceptable, as the overall objective and the scope of the plastic agreement is much larger. For us, indeed, it means that we need to have very strong upstream measures, including related to plastic product and chemicals of concern as used in plastic products. The discussion on this has been ongoing this night, and will continue. There is a proposal of a compromise text which could bring together all the parties possibly. There is, of course, the second part, which is very important. These are downstream provisions and measures, including emissions, releases, plastic waste management, and existing plastic pollution. Related to that are always finances that are called means of implementation, so which will be the money associated with the work on all these measures. And this is another critical part of the discussions where, of course, the solution needs to be found together with the progress in the upstream and downstream measures. There are implementing measures, which are regular things and relate really to translation into really national action. And finally, institutional arrangements that are in every treaty, very critical for the functioning of the treaty. With this, I would stop and I would pass the work on to Juergen to continue with our global framework on chemicals. Thank you.
Hello and good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well, and thanks a lot, Marijana, for passing on the floor. So the global framework on chemicals, which is a multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral tool in order to address chemicals and waste management at global level, was adopted in September 2023 at the 5th International Conference on Chemicals Management in Bonn. And all stakeholders that participated agreed on a common vision and on strategic objectives and targets. So the global framework has 5 strategic objectives and 28 targets that are meant to guide countries and stakeholders in jointly addressing the life cycle of chemicals, including products and waste. And the global framework has also a fund, and this fund is mainly meant to support the developing countries in their efforts to implement the global framework on chemicals. Next slide, please. Can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. The vision of the global framework on chemicals is a planet free of harm from chemicals and waste for a safe, healthy, and sustainable future. And all participants joined this vision. So all are striving now in their work and to achieve this vision. Next slide, please. The scope of the global framework is very broad. It covers the full life cycle of chemicals, including also chemicals and products, and also when they become waste. And as I already mentioned, the global framework is a multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral tool. So it encompasses the involvement of all relevant sectors and stakeholders, in particular also industry stakeholders, in order to achieve the strategic objectives and targets. Next slide, please. The global framework has 5 strategic objectives that are clustered along the following lines. So objective A is about legal frameworks, institutional mechanisms, and capacities of countries in order to safely manage chemicals. The objective B is about the production and sharing of knowledge, data, and information. And this involves generation of data and knowledge by industry, and also that this information is made available to everyone. So industry plays an important role here, together certainly with the national authorities. Then objective C is about issues of concern. Here the idea is to address very particular issues that have been identified by all stakeholders in a coordinated and targeted way. And this is in order to achieve the maximum results. And then D is about safer alternatives and innovation in order to identify more sustainable solution in product value chains. So here again, industry plays a very important role together with research, academia, and national institution. And strategic objective E is about the resource mobilization, improved partnerships, cooperation, and enhancement of capacity building. And all this with the objective to better integrate chemicals and waste management in all relevant decision-making processes and at industry level, but also at national level. So this is broadly the structure of the global framework on chemicals. Currently, we are finalizing some work that has not been finished when the framework was set up. So we are now establishing a measurability structure and indicators to measure progress towards achieving the objectives. We are working to develop so-called implementation programs, which are meant to support all stakeholders in their efforts to better implement the different strategic objectives and targets. And currently, we are discussing 3 implementation programs that address strategic objective A. So it's about the strengthening of integrated national chemicals legislation and institutional capacities. The second is about strategic objective D, strengthening economic and industry sector engagement and action. And the third is about strategic objective E, which is about the mainstreaming of chemicals and waste management. And regarding the implementation program for economic and industry sector engagement, a survey has been carried out in summer this year, where in particular industry was invited to provide input towards the definition of this implementation program. And more than 100 companies and about 40 industry associations contributed to this survey. And all this work will then be submitted to the open-ended working group that will be held in June next year. And in this open-ended working group, the ambition is to finalize some of the work that has been launched and to submit it to the first international conference under the global framework that will be held at the end of 2026. Thank you very much.
European value around the world in regard to building more sound and sustainable chemical policy. Thank you also for highlighting the science policy panel meaning. It's very important having in mind especially what the similar institution means for the climate negotiation. It is important also to notice that we will have something similar in terms of chemical management on the global level. And also thank you very much for highlighting the role of chemical industry in regard of global framework on chemicals. It's indeed give a lot of opportunity for collaboration for the chemical industry. Thank you very much for your time and efforts, and I hope to reconnect again soon.
Thank you. Do widzenia.
Do widzenia. Bye bye.
Bye.